Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating and air, restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
The day that cross-border commuters and businesses have waited nearly 3 years for has arrived. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Today, Customs and Border Protection opened the Ped West pedestrian border crossing for the first time since the pandemic. KPBS reporter Gustavo Solis spoke to commuters who say it dramatically lowered wait times.
Laura Ornelas crossed the border in record time Monday morning.
Ni un minuto hice en lo que camino, llegué.
There was virtually no wait at the Ped West border crossing in San Ysidro. Ornelas says she didn't even have to wait a minute, just walk straight through. That's a far cry from the 2 hours she usually had to wait at Ped East, the other border crossing, back when Ped West was still closed. And now that she's in the U.S., she knows exactly where to go.
Pues me gusta ir mucho al arroz.
Straight to the Ross department store where she will hunt for bargains. Ornelas was among a steady stream of happy border crossers Monday morning. They included young professionals, families, and even cyclists. It was the first time in nearly 3 years that they've been able to use Ped West. Customs and Border Protection closed it during the early days of the pandemic when travel restrictions led to a big decrease in border traffic. However, when most of the travel restrictions were lifted, Ped West didn't reopen. Eventually, a makeshift camp filled with thousands of asylum seekers formed on the Mexican side of the crossing. The migrants wanted to be in the right place when Ped West finally reopened again. But that didn't happen. The port of entry remained closed even after the Tijuana Police Department and Mexican military cleared out the camp. Meanwhile, the bottleneck at Ped East only grew worse. People were waiting as long as 4 hours on busy mornings. Marlene Sepulveda remembers those long waits, especially during the holidays.
Se extrañaba el Ped West, definitivamente ya hacíamos 3-4 horas de fila. Más en la temporada navideña.
She and her 2 young children crossed the border with ease on Monday morning. They were headed to Las Americas outlet malls. Sepulveda says she actually expected a bigger crowd at Ped West. Jason Wells is the CEO of the San Ysidro Chamber of Commerce. He also noticed the same thing, but wasn't particularly surprised.
Partly we're creatures of habit, and so unfortunately for more than 3 years now, this has been closed, right? And so you're still going over to Ped East.
He expects pedestrian traffic to increase in the coming days.
I would say within 2 weeks, you're almost going to have a 50-50 balance of crossers at both of these crossings.
Although the U.S.-bound lanes are now open at Ped West, the Mexico-bound lanes remain closed. Several people trying to enter Mexico were turned back Monday morning. Customs and Border Protection did not respond to questions regarding when they plan to open the Mexico-bound lanes. Gustavo Solis, KPBS News.
President Joe Biden is in Mexico for a 2-day North American summit, but a long-awaited visit came Sunday on the other side of the border. The president made his first trip to the border as it relates to the ongoing surge in migrants and asylum seekers. El Paso is one of the border communities seeing those big crowds. The visit included a meeting with Texas's governor, who urged the president to resume border wall construction. The Ocean Beach Pier was closed today, a response to stormy weather and high surf. Conditions like that are causing quick deterioration of the pier that was never expected to last this long. KPBS high-tech reporter Thomas Fudge has more on the weather, the pier, and the hopes to replace it.
2002. It's that time of the year where the waves get high, and they've knocked off some of the railing out there and kind of hit the couple of doors out there. So it's not really bad, but there's a lot of damage out there.
Chuck Fisher runs the cafe on the Ocean Beach Pier, a cafe that's now closed because public access to the pier has been shut down. High surf and other elements are causing the pier to fall apart. It was built in 1966, and it wasn't expected to last more than 50 years.
It's a remarkable deterioration. Once it's hit that 50 years, it really has accelerated. So It's just the writing's on the wall. We really need to do something about it.
Denny Knox, who runs a local business association, says the OB Pier is so iconic, most businesses in OB have a picture of it in their logo. But she says studies have shown that the railings and the pilings can't last much longer, and it's clear to her what's needed.
I'd love to see it replaced with something that's pays a little attention to what we've had before, but then is new in ways we haven't probably even thought of yet.
City of San Diego officials overseeing the possible replacement of the pier couldn't be reached for comment, but Knox says building a higher pier with new materials could give San Diego a pier with a 100-year lifespan. The recent weather that closed the pier has been a series of atmospheric rivers, including one more on the way tonight. Climate scientist Julie Kalansky says ultimately rising seas that come from global warming will have a greater impact on structures like the Ocean Beach Pier, and keep that in mind if you plan to replace it.
In any rebuilding or planning, it's really important to consider the climate change projections and the trends, because there are things that can potentially be done to mitigate impacts in different areas.
And people want the OB Pier to be replaced, even at a cost of $60 to $100 million.
If it's like really that badly destroyed, then definitely tear it down, but for sure replace it with another pier.
Thomas Fudge, KPBS News.
And this string of winter storms is expected to bring some relief to California's drought, but it also carries a risk. Cornell Bernard is in Sonoma County, where first responders are ready for another dangerous week as rising waters threaten flooding.
Check out new video of a waterlogged Russian River Valley shot from Sonoma 1, the county fire district's chopper. Saturday's reconnaissance mission showed swollen creeks and lagoons, which normally take overflow from the Russian River, now reaching the top of their banks. We were there when Fire Chief Mark Hine landed after surveying the rising water, and with more storms on the way, his impressions were sobering.
I think the flooding we're going to see is going to reach disaster proportions as far as it getting into businesses and residences and cutting off access roads.
Many folks in Guerneville have been getting ready this week for flooding and possible evacuations, stacking sandbags around shops and homes.
Right now we don't have power. We haven't had power since Wednesday afternoon.
Daniel Falcon Schneider lives in Cazadero, where toppled trees are everywhere.
What did Kaz Highway look like Thursday morning? Like a tornado went through. You couldn't see the asphalt, it was just branches. And
he worries floodwater from the river could leave him stranded.
Biggest fear for me is just being stuck on that side of Guerneville, so the west side.
It's not just the Russian River first responders are concerned about. They're also watching Santa Rosa Creek, which is prone to flooding, and firefighters are getting ready for the possibility of water rescues. Swiftwater rescue teams like this one from the Santa Rosa Fire Department are doing last-minute training, ready to respond to emergencies in real time.
They've been busy, not only training, but also pre-surveying a lot of our creeks, streams, finding issues, potential problem spots, just so that we're doing everything we can to be prepared.
Firefighters urge folks living near creeks and rivers to be ready to leave their homes if water starts to rise.
Have a plan B and a go bag packed. Where are you going to go? How are you going to connect with your family? And how will you communicate or deal with the situation, especially if it's at night and if you lose power?
Coming up later, we'll show you more of the damage in Northern California caused by recent storms. We'll also have their forecast for San Diego, which is predicting more rain this week. The political insurgency over the weekend in Brazil bears a striking similarity to the January 6th uprising at the U.S. Capitol. Brazilians living in San Diego tell KPBS reporter Alexander Wen they were shocked but not surprised by what happened.
On Sunday, thousands of supporters of former Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro stormed Congress, the Supreme Court, and the presidential palace, demanding the Brazilian army restore the far-right Bolsonaro to power and oust the newly inaugurated leftist president Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. Today, Vice President Kamala Harris condemned the attack on Brasilia after swearing in the U.S.'s newest ambassador to Brazil.
Well, let's be clear. This was an obvious and clear attack on a democratic process, and we condemn it, of course. I will also say that, as I've said to the ambassador, Ambassador Bagley, that I'm very confident in her ability to represent the United States and to extend to President Lula all that we mean in terms of the work that we will do together as allies on some of the most important issues facing our world.
Here in San Diego, local Brazilians say they're devastated by what happened.
It's a sad moment for Brazilians overall.
Roberto Rocha is a visiting economics professor at San Diego State. He says the rise of the far-right movement in South America is worrisome.
It's a populism, and that's a bit of it's a threat to Latin America overall, and we need to keep an eye on it. And doing this, happening this in Brazil, it could pave the way to some other countries. Yeah, that's for sure.
Crystal Panova is the Associate Director for the Center for Brazilian Studies at SDSU. She says the images on Sunday were shocking but not unexpected. She says far right-wing groups have been publicizing their plans on social media.
We know that people who are involved in the international far-right movement, like Steve Bannon, have been involved in coordinating with Brazil, and so it was. I guess it was surprising that it happened yesterday because many people expected an event like this would happen either before the inauguration, like as an attempt to intervene in Lula coming to power.
Abner Sotonos is a UC San Diego PhD student from Rio de Janeiro. He focuses on Latin American history, especially Brazilian history. He hopes that, unlike the United States, the Brazilian government will act swiftly to hold the insurrectionists accountable.
I hope that Supreme Court, the Parliament, the President, and media agree that we cannot have this situation again in Brazil. So I expect that the law will be, put in practice.
Alexander Nguyen, KPBS News.
I'm Amna Nawaz. Tonight on the NewsHour, the parallels between the storming of Brazil's Congress and the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol. Coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
It's been a long time coming, but today the city of San Diego started rolling out its organic waste recycling program. Green bins and kitchen pails are being delivered over the next several months. The first went out today in the 92102 and 92113 zip codes, including neighborhoods like South Park, Golden Hill, Logan Heights, and Lincoln Park. They can be used for food scraps, plants, even soiled paper like coffee filters.
You can actually have landscaping in there, some food scraps, and if you layer it properly, you can help reduce some of that yuck factor.
I think we're just kind of behind. I think it's a good generation now. This is the way of life. This is the way you do things.
The program is part of a new California law that went into effect 1 year ago, but supply chain issues prevented the city from getting it done then. For more on when you can expect to get your organic bins, you can visit sandiego.gov/organic waste recycling. Some new local leaders are now on the job officially and ceremonially. The county administration building hosted a swearing-in event for recently elected supervisors and other high-ranking positions, including that of sheriff, district attorney, assessor, and treasurer. All took their official oaths last week when their new terms began. Supervisor Nathan Fletcher says he is endorsing Nora Vargas to chair the board. A formal nomination is expected tomorrow. Imperial Beach has long had a reputation as a scruffy beach town, but it's been gentrifying in recent years. Now city officials have a new plan to make it a destination city. KPBS reporter Gustavo Solis has the story.
If you haven't visited Imperial Beach in a while, you may not recognize it. The town's gritty surf vibe is still there. But now, there's a fancy hotel right on the beach and a bunch of new shops, restaurants, and breweries. While IB's gentrification came later than most places in San Diego County, it didn't come out of nowhere. It actually started back in the year 2000 with a vision that was simply called the Big Picture. Newly elected Mayor Paloma Aguirre says that the Big Picture changed Seacoast Drive, which is the city's beachfront commercial corridor. We talked on the IB Pier last week as the winter storms were coming in.
We've made tremendous progress, especially in the last 8 years. We've brought a lot of new businesses to IB, especially in our Seacoast area, on our Palm Avenue corridor.
Now, there's a new version of the Big Picture for the coming decade. Officials are calling it the Bigger Picture. City Manager Andy Hall came up with the name.
Everybody talked about the big picture, and it was a great document for providing vision and whatnot. So we thought, let's not mess with it. Let's call it the bigger picture.
This time, the vision goes beyond Seacoast Drive. It includes more public services, an updated pier, and new pedestrian-friendly shopping corridors in the east part of town.
The bigger picture really had a lot to do with having the nature of Imperial Beach change from trying to be just a bedroom community to being something more.
Mayor Aguirre is especially proud of the fact that the new plan includes 13th Street and the eastern part of Palm Avenue. Both areas have historically been neglected.
Districts 1 and Districts 4, which are the northern and eastern, the outskirts of our city, if you will, haven't had the same amount of investment as other areas like where we are today.
Individual parts of the plan will be funded by a voter-approved sales tax, hotel taxes, the general fund, and other fees. It also includes infrastructure improvements that the entire region will benefit from. Part of that will be at the Bayshore Bikeway, a bike path that includes the Silver Strand Beach just north of IB and wraps around the entire San Diego Bay. It will eventually connect to the border. Hall says that the people and vehicles who use the bikeway have changed over the last 20 years, so the city needs to change with them.
We didn't have electric bikes going 25 miles an hour when the bike path first put in. We didn't have as many pedestrians walking on the bike path. Now there's a lot of bicycle pedestrian conflict. So we need to have things like hydration stations and lights.
Some of the initiatives of the bigger picture are already in the works. The city brought back its Parks and Recreation Department, and a facelift to IB Pier is already underway.
It's an iconic pier. People propose to each other here. We see it, we witness it, and so absolutely, I think it's definitely going to generate a lot more revenue for Imperial Beach.
That's Jem Crumley. I spoke to her inside the Cowabunga ice cream shop that's been at the pier for 20 years.
In the 90s, it wasn't the best place to be, and so I used to come here, and it was kind of, IB had a bad name at the time, unfortunately, and so there's been a lot of cleaning up and a lot of business that are coming in.
Crumley says she's excited to see how the bigger picture changes Imperial Beach over the next decade. Gustavo Solis, KPBS News.
Our recent coverage of Imperial Beach includes an interview with Serge Dedina. His 8 years of leading the city as mayor recently came to a close, and you can stream that story anytime on the KPBS YouTube page. New federal regulations under consideration could help clean up the air in San Diego neighborhoods. KPBS environment reporter Eric Anderson says Barrio Logan, National City, and San Ysidro stand to benefit.
The Environmental Protection Agency is looking at tightening the amount of particle pollution it considers acceptable.
Particulate pollution, or more commonly known as soot, are tiny particles of air pollution that come from oil refineries, from diesel, from our cars, their tailpipe pollution.
That could help clean up the air around San Diego's working waterfront and along the international border. Both areas suffer from higher than normal pollution linked to industrial activity or cars and trucks. And state officials consider those neighborhoods to have some of the highest health risks to residents in California. The EPA proposal suggests lowering the current standard from 12 micrograms per cubic meter of air to 9 or 10. Federal officials say that'll save more than 4,000 lives. Frank and other environmental groups are pushing for the limit to be even lower.
Tightening it down to 8 would save an estimated 19,600 lives per year. So we're talking about thousands and thousands of additional people that could be, kept alive and healthy if we went even further.
The EPA will seek out public comment in the next couple of months. A change in the rule could come later this year. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
Rain is expected to move into San Diego overnight. We're at the tail end of a series of Pacific storms doing considerable damage to our north. Lisa Mitri is in Sacramento, where some people spent the weekend making emergency repairs to their homes.
All the noise at night kept people up.
The wind was just howling, just whipping.
It was around midnight when Jan Ponticelli saw firsthand how powerful that wind was.
My bedroom's on the top floor, and I could hear bump. I kept hearing like something hitting the house, and when I got up to look out this bank of windows, Honest to God, I saw the tree coming right at me.
It fell onto the rooftop right above her bedroom at her East Sacramento home, but she was okay, able to check out the damage from the outside when the sun came up.
This main area here is buckling. Can you see under there?
Cracks where the tree landed.
Honestly, it could have been worse.
Another tree at this same intersection of 36th and H crashed through the wall surrounding this home, pulling down power lines with it and stopping just short of damaging Aaron Scott's home.
Almost, but not quite.
Still, there was plenty to clean up around his house.
We've actually only lived here for about 6 months.
And this is not exactly what he expected.
Welcome to Sacramento.
He moved here from Boston.
Looking for better weather.
Despite the damage, neighbors tried to stay positive.
We're going to be okay. I'm sure I'm one of many, many people.
And she was right. This tree toppled over, doing some damage at 21st and F Street. At 43rd between H and J Streets, a tall tree ripped up part of the sidewalk and landed on top of the house across the street. Then trees and power lines were down at 8th and Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, where utility crews were out there trying to get that electricity back up and running. And at 42nd and F Streets, the cleanup began after yet another tree uprooted and balanced onto power lines, and one near that peeled out of the ground and onto a home. The scary sight that followed a scary sound.
Just after midnight, there was a gigantic crash.
Joey Kleeman was in her home on I near 23rd Street.
And I was trapped. I couldn't get out the front door. The window's broken. I tried the back door. The back door couldn't open it.
After about 40 minutes, someone was able to help her get out.
There's so much worse it could have been. My neighbor has a gigantic branch, going directly through, that's pierced his roof. Pierced it.
Just about everyone seems to have a story to tell after a sleepless night sparked by dangerous, damaging winds.
Let's start you off with your weather headlines here. We have a lot to talk about. We have more rain here moving in tonight into Tuesday. It is going to be windy, gustier though towards the mountains and in the desert. And we are seeing some snowfall above 7,500 feet. We're dealing with another round here of the atmospheric river. We do have this area of low pressure here still circulating off in the Pacific. That's really helping us pull in this large batch of moisture here, bringing us this extreme precipitation there through California, especially there along the coast. And even Southern California here experiencing some of those storm impacts, mostly going to be in the form of some rain and those gustier winds too at times. We do have flood watches in effect though more north through areas like Long Beach and north of Oceanside, but we do have wind advisories too in effect there through Santa Monica and into Huntington Beach. That's when winds again are going to continue to pick up. We could see winds as high as 40 to 60 miles per hour through portions of Southern California, especially as we make our way more inland closer to the mountains. Overall though, here for your Monday, we're staying mostly dry here through Southern California, but tonight we're picking up some rain. We're dropping down to lows in the mid to upper 50s here, a shower or two late, but by tomorrow that rain does spread, becomes more widespread here across the area, so expect a rainy Tuesday here along the coast, and we make our way more inland across the mountains. So again, keep your umbrella here at the ready. It is going to be very rainy here, especially along the coast. That's when we're going to expect the most action here. We do experience a warm up here Thursday into Friday. That's when highs are going to be reaching the mid to upper 60s there along the coast. More rain though heading into the weekend. We're experiencing that warm up too, more inland, jumping almost 10 degrees just from Wednesday into Thursday. Towards the mountains, rinse repeat. It's going to be a rainy Tuesday and a rainy Saturday, but in between that we are going to experience a slight rise in temperatures and around the deserts hitting highs in the 70s there by Friday.
The Buffalo Bills player who collapsed on the field during a Monday night football game last week is now out of the hospital. Gloria Pazmino updates us on Demar Hamlin's recovery and how the NFL showed its support during this weekend's games.
Hey, they always say don't play for the name on the back, you play for the name on the front. It's pretty special to play for that number on the front too. All right, go get one down. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3.
The Buffalo Bills back on the field Sunday, honoring Demar Hamlin and the medical staff who helped save his life.
Please rise and show your support as only Bills Mafia can.
It has been a remarkable recovery for Hamlin, who collapsed Monday night after suffering cardiac arrest. Since the terrifying ordeal, Hamlin is now breathing on his own. Doctors say the player's neurological function is intact, but he remains in critical condition. On Friday, Hamlin surprised the team with a FaceTime call.
It was a little bit hard to hear, but he, as you'd imagine, he said, I love you, boys.
Sunday, Hamlin posted a heartfelt message on social media saying, "It's game day, and there is nothing I want more than to be running out that tunnel with my brothers." Bills quarterback Josh Allen, along with several other players, entered the stadium wearing shirts with the number 3 in a show of love and support for their teammate. Outside the Buffalo Bills Stadium in Orchard Park, a celebration where team rivalry gave way to the unifying power of sports.
No matter what team you're with, we love each other.
Yes, we do. We came together as a whole.
Yep.
And that's what mattered.
I'm Gloria Pasmino reporting.
And there's another silver lining for Demar Hamlin. An ongoing fundraiser established before his health scare is taking off in a big way. Donations to Hamlin's toy drive now tops $8.5 million for the Chasing M's Foundation. The money goes toward toy drives, back-to-school events, and other giveaways for kids in Hamlin's community. And here is a look at what we're working on for tomorrow in the KPBS newsroom. NPR's Morning Edition is covering the storms hitting Northern California and the flooding that's already affecting some communities. And KPBS Midday Edition will give us another check on the reopening of the Ped West crossing at the San Ysidro port of entry. And you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Good night.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating and air, restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley. And by the following: by viewers like you. Thank you.